Top 3 new decks. We got the new decks of the week, and today we got some freaks, ladies and gentlemen. They say the freaks only come out at night, but the freaks are apparently all over these 5-0 leagues and challenges this week, man. We saw way more new decks this week than we did the first week of Standard, which only makes sense, right? First week after a rotation, people doing what's tried and true. Second week, people have had more time to branch out, come up with some ideas, flesh them out a little bit, buy the cards and craft the wild cards and stuff that they need to actually make the decks work and whatever. So I wasn't too surprised to see some really wild decks second week of the season. And we'll start with probably the craziest one of the bunch. This is what we're calling Dawnstar Dinos by Stainerson. Got 5-0 in a league just today, actually, as I record this on the 5th of August 2025. Now, what exactly are we doing? So it looks kind of like a Kona deck, more on Kona as we move through the week. We'll talk about this a little bit more moving on, but obviously we can drop big stuff so long as this is tapped at the beginning of our second main phase. Kona has not seen a whole lot of play up to now, but this last week, things have changed just slightly, and this is just one of the Kona decks that we're going to be looking at. But what do you actually drop with Kona? And by the way, Kona's not the only thing that lets us drop big stuff, but we've got Galta, Primal Hunger in here, a big old 12/12 trample lady. That's pretty cool. Pugnacious Hammerskull is a 3-mana 6/6. Vaultborn Tyrant is Vaultborn Tyrant Son. Trumpeting Carnosaur. Like, there's so many crazy dinos in this deck. We even get one Regal Imperiosaur to buff all of our dinosaurs. But we're only playing one of those. That said, there are 4 Llanowar Elves in here to ramp us, 2 Ixali's Lorekeeper to ramp specifically dinosaurs, Belligerent Yearling, and Itzkint give us 2-drop dinosaurs. Itzkint is kind of a removal spell. Hey, you try to say that name right. And then Agonosaur Rex allows us to make creatures bigger when we cycle it or whatever, but it's also just a 5-mana 8/8 trample, which is pretty good. Most of the time. So, Gruul Dinosaurs, kind of, that just randomly play Screaming Nemesis. So I guess we're looking for more 3-drops. It can't just be Hammerskull and like the one Imperiosaur. I love the call here. Instead of the 4 of Imperiosaur, let's shave 3 of them. Just put in Screaming Nemesis. It's too good not to play it, right? Apparently. But with the Itzkint, again, it's really difficult. But with the Itzkint in here and the Trumpeting Carnosaur, that's 5 removal spells in the creature base alone, which is pretty nice. But we've also got in the artifacts Sledge class Seed Ship, and this will also help us drop huge guys. You see, it's just a 3-mana station thing with flying, but once it's stationed to 7+, it attacks, so you just throw a creature from your hand onto the table. So this is kind of like copies, I guess, 3 and 4 of Kona, but it's not legendary. That's nice. And then Dawnstar. Dawnstar's also in here. So if we station this 10+, whenever we attack, this thing deals 100 damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. And there's even one copy of Avendo, the Waking Haven, in here, by the way. Kind of the new Gaia's Cradle, because it's really, really good with Kona. That's the whole reason that it's in here. Just play 1. Same with Cavaron, Memorial World. That's great with Kona. We can tap down Kona to station it, then drop something huge from our hand, and then station more, if that's what we want to do. So we can get these stationed like pretty quickly. We can get the Dawnstar station really fast in the deck, and obviously we get Sledge class Seed Ship station. That was tough to say too. Pretty fast in this deck. And suddenly we get all of those benefits. Just pop a thing for 100. That's another reason Screaming Nemesis is in the deck, I'm sure, is because you could just beat them down with dinosaurs. You could drop huge stuff off Kona or Seed Ship, or you could go all the way and actually hit your Screaming Nemesis for 100 damage with the Dawn Siren in the game that way. There's a lot of fun stuff in this deck, man. It's only got 1 League 5-0 under its belt, and that happened this morning. So I can't really make it like the deck of the week or anything, but these are mostly the coolest, newest decks of the week, and this definitely falls into both of those categories. I had somebody ask last week in the comments, like, oh, what, so these are like the best decks now, these pieces of crap? Like, that was the tone of the comment. It's like, no, nobody said these were the best decks. These are new decks that we've never seen before that are really, and that's cool. Let's point out the new decks that are doing okay in League and stuff. And this is this is the one right here, Dad. I'm telling you, just Gruul Dinosaurs with the Screaming Nemesis Dawnstar combo. It plays Dawnstar in the first place. That's insanity. You're doing that? We look at the sideboard here, and things are pretty simple. You know, it goes Vacuum against Reanimator. You see this in every sideboard. Another Itzkint, Scrap Shooter to take out important, like, permanent types. Another Screaming Nemesis, because, you know, it's good. Thrashing Brontodon. is a dinosaur that takes out important permanent types. Triumphant Chomp is a dinosaur removal spell for small mall guys. Trumpeting Carnosaur, we need more removal. And then Valgavoth, when we want to drop that off Kona and stuff. So just a wild deck, man. Congratulations to Stainerson for 5-0ing with this. And I'm aware that on any given Sunday, any deck can 5-0 because their opponents trip up on lands, or they don't get the right colors, or they just get the perfect draws themselves. You know, like those things can happen. But I choose to believe that there is some actual hope for like dinosaur drop big stuff gruel deck. So you can't even like classify it. It's so cool. And if nothing else, you just ramp up the Vaultborn Tyrant, you win the game like that. So sick deck. Sick deck, bro. But it's time to get to another deck that's just wild. Never seen anything like it. But this one, actually, let's do this one next, because it's another, we can continue the Kona theme. This one, too, has only had one 5-0 this week by Lady Frey, and it was a couple of days ago on the 4th, if I'm not mistaken. So this one leans a lot heavier on Kona to drop big boys, like second main phase, but it does not have a lot of like, you know, spacecraft to station or vehicles to crew or anything like that. Now, it does have a spacecraft. We'll get to it in a second, but it's important really to note that this deck plays the full 4 of Adagio Windswept Bastion and the full 4 of Avendo Waking Haven. You see, they're not legendary, so you can just do that if you feel like it. The deck even has the stones to continue to play a full 4 of Hushwood Verge, even though it's only got, what, 7 total basics in the deck? That's hilarious. But yeah, Adagia and Avendo can do some cool stuff in this deck, but they're mostly for, you know, making sure that Kona stays tapped down, and you don't have to like pay extra mana or anything like that. Just tap Kona down to help station these, and you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. And Adagia has plenty of cool things to copy in the deck. You can copy a Seam Ripper, Dredger's Insight. Those are cool plays. Copy Pinnacle Star Cage. Sick. It can copy the Seriema, and even though it's legendary, you can still like get another search trigger for a legendary card. And there's a number of legendary cards in the deck. Seriema is really interesting in here because it goes and puts a legendary creature card into your hand, which is dope with Kona because it allows us to toolbox our giant legendary guys instead of like playing 4 copies of them a piece and hoping that we get them. You know, like Seriema, we can play that at turn 3 and line up our Kona play for turn 4 because we've already got a planet in play. We can slam the Kona down, tap it immediately to help station the land, right? So that really lines up nicely if we use Seriema on turn 3 to go get the Urini or go get the Valgavoth. Right? Then we don't have to just like play 4 freaking Valgavoth in our deck, like hope that we draw it. Wily Duke is also a 3 of in here. Really cool to see this card getting some play, man. So whenever it becomes tapped, you gain a live draw card. So it works really well again with these like station lands, because you can just throw it into play, immediately tap it down, gain your life, draw your card. You're feeling pretty good. You know, you've gotten a third of the way there to stationing both lands. You know, like they're both 12 station. This guy's a 4 power. So really, really nice. And you've also got like Summoned Fenrir in here. You've got Overlord of the Mistmoors. Both of these Adagia can copy because they're enchantments, and that's gross as well. So Commune with Beavers is in the deck as well. You look at the top 3 for a single green, and you can get an artifact, creature, or land from among them. So that's going to help. It's going to help tremendously, making sure that you can get your Pinnacle Star Cage or your Seriema. They're both artifacts. Or you can get any of these because they're basically all creatures, you know. So really, really cool stuff in the deck. It has like an Anticipate effect for 1 mana that gives a good card selection. It has, you know, it's able to find its Kona. It's able to maybe find its 1-ubs more easily if it doesn't have Seriema because of that card advantage piece. It's got a good removal spell in Get Lost. I haven't really pointed that out yet. So altogether, I think this deck can probably just play like a fair mid-range game. You know what I mean? Pinnacle Star Cage and Get Lost are both like great removal spells. And it might be able to even find an opening without like so much aggro in the format to actually play Seriema on turn 3 and not do much else, you know? So the deck spends some time lining up, but it has like massive turn 4 plays. So just a crazy little thing right here. It's also got the 4 Seam Rip too. So lots of good like lower end removal too. Just fantastic looking little pile here, man. We haven't seen Kona flexed too hard since it came out, and it's good to see it, you know, get a little love this week as people try to figure out what the best thing to do with Kona and these lands is. And I'm not sure that we've even seen the best thing yet. Sideboard is Elspeth Smite. You might expect that. Exercise, you might expect that. Maze Mind Tome draws cards in late games. Pinnacle Star Cage, another one against aggro. Starfall Invocation is the case that they gave me sweeper-wise. That's really interesting because you can just put the Kona back into play and go start doing crazy stuff with it. Suric Elusive Hunter is in here. I've seen this in a couple of decks this week too. Specifically, there is a kind of blue-green resurgence this week. We're going to look at a blue-green deck last this week, but there's also a blue-green like Genomorph Imago Tifa deck, and you'll often see a copy of Suric in the main deck there. So this card's getting some play this week. Good to see because it's really good. It's like whenever a creature you control or a creature spell you control becomes target of a spell of ability, you draw a card. So guy gets hit by removal, draw a card. That's just good. That's just good. Valorous Stance is in here too to protect our guys and blow up huge dudes. A Vanilla's in here, but not the other one. Just the Vanilla, interestingly, to return permanents from our graveyard to our hand. We need a way to get like a Kona back after it's been removed. It makes sense. And then 4 Voice of Victory, which you think would probably be in the main deck, right? It makes sense if this was, turn 2 Voice of Victory, turn 3 Siriema, turn 4 Kona, go off, let's hit it. That seems pretty nasty, but Voice of Victory is specifically good against all the Dimir piles in the format and a lot of other stuff for that matter, but especially anything with islands in it. Voice of Victory is crazy, so you want to play that. But again, really cool thing here. I hate to give you 2 Kona decks in a row, but Kona's been kind of trying to break through this week. We still haven't figured out exactly what the right configuration is, but even stuff that people are just throwing at the wall seems to be sticking. Spaghetti's done. I think these noodles are cooked, baby. This Kona's looking all right in this format, but we will move on to the 3rd deck of the week. This one has received more than just like a single 5-0 so far this week. It's actually received, I believe, 3 total 5-0s, but interestingly, it's all from the same grinder. Cute Chandra has grinded this deck to a 5-0 3 out of 4 of the last days of this week, if I recall correctly. The last 2 days, they have back-to-back 5-0'd with this deck, so let's look at it. It's a really weird one. Another kind of toolboxy list here that I really, really like. So let's take a look. What are we actually doing in this deck card by card? Well, you see the Clockwork Percussionist, the Gleaming Gear Drake. Okay, so we're playing artifacts, right? Torch the Tower is in here. We already know that we're playing Percussionist, so there is good stuff to sacrifice to a Torch. Great removal spell right now, by the way. Speaking of removal spells, there's Chainsaw in the deck. There's Legion Extruder in the deck. So, hey, Perilous Snare, Dusk Rose Reliquary. There's a lot of removal. What is that? 4 Torch the Tower plus Chainsaw is 5. Legion Extruder is 9. Perilous Snare is 10. Dusk Rose Reliquary gives us 12 main deck removal spells. And I'm not even done because there's also 1 Warmaker Gunship in the deck. So 13 main deck removal spells in our deck is a lot, but we still get creatures off of Extruder. We get Gleaming Gear Drake. We get Clockwork Percussionist, which is, mostly fodder and stuff. But as far as other artifacts we want to play, there's Collector's Vault in here, still available to play in Standard. Creates treasures, filters cards. Let's go. Krajan Relic gets us more cards. Let's go. Kind of a removal spell if you use it right. Let's just main deck the Ghost Vacuum because we're trying to up the artifact count to critical mass anyway. Makes sense to be equipped with a Ghost Vacuum game 1. And then Repurposing Bay is kind of the sauce of the deck. This can go and get a lot of these one-of artifacts that we're playing if we need them. If we need the Ghost Vacuum, go get it. You need a Perilous Snare to remove that guy, and go get the Perilous Snare. But most importantly, it can go and get the 1 copy of Phantom Train Woo Woo that we're playing in the deck. So a 4-mana 4/4 vehicle with trample. You have to sacrifice another artifact or creature to put a +1/+1 counter on this vehicle. Becomes a spirit artifact creature in addition to its other types. So it doesn't seem super important, right? I did have some people saying Dev, you got to talk about Phantom Train for the Aristocrats decks. And I'm like, it costs too much. It's 4 mana for this. We just got a 2-drop that does this. I'm not playing Phantom Train. The reason this deck is playing Phantom Train is because the actual marquee card in the deck is the 4 of Weapons Manufacturing that we're on. 2 mana for an enchantment. Whenever a non-token artifact you control enters, you get a colorless artifact token named Munitions with. Whenever this token leaves the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to any target. So, obviously, we can play the Phantom Train with the Repurposing Bay. Just sacrifice any of our 3-drop artifacts to go get the Phantom Train. And then sacrifice all of the munitions to that and hit the opponent for 20, So that seems all right. It seems like it's a fun little way to win games. I'm not sure how else the deck is supposed to necessarily win games. Enigma Jewel is in here. You can flip that over and cool stuff happens, I guess. But, Jewel is in here to do stuff like activate Collector's Vault or Cryogen Relic or Chainsaw's Equip ability or Legion Extruder, gives us free tokens at this point. Repurposing Bay costs 2 mana. So Enigma Jewel, even though it's legendary, makes sense that it's 4 because, most of our artifacts will have like a 2 mana activation cost. So we'll play Soul Ring. And that's basically what this card is in this deck, is Soul Ring. But there's a couple other ways of sacking artifacts. There's like Dusk Rose Reliquary, I guess, lets us sack artifacts and stuff. Cute. Torch the Tower lets us sack artifacts. Gleaming Gear Drake has this thing where whenever we sack an artifact, it gets +1/+1 counter. So in some games, it can get up to, a big guy. I'll just say that. Like, we sacrifice a bunch of artifacts to Phantom Train. We deal all of our munitions damage because we sacked all of those. Now Gleaming Gear Drake gets in for like 10 flying damage. Phantom Train gets in for 12 flying damage. Or not flying damage, trample damage. And we just try to win the game like that, Seems like it probably wouldn't work, right? Seems like Gleaming Gear Drake is somewhat easily removed. It seems like Phantom Train is just a one-of. It's kind of fragile in the first place. Seems like you wouldn't have enough munitions on the table to win the game, but the deck has been 5-0ing all week, and again, it's only one player, but nobody else is playing the deck. I feel like if somebody else is on the deck, like, maybe would get more 5-0s, but Cute Chandra has taken it to a 5-0 multiple times this week. And I love when, one player has a lot of faith in a deck, and they prove that the deck is good. 1-5-0 may not mean much, but you start getting to 2, 3 5-0s, then now you're actually looking at a pile, and we got to get more players on it. So it's one of the reasons I wanted to shine a spotlight on it this week. The deck plays 23 lands. You see them there. Starting Towns, and Sacred Foundry, Spire Bluffs, Riverfire Verges. Even plays some Fountain Ports, as you might expect in a deck like this. It can make treasures, and artifacts are good. 2 Annul in the sideboard, as well as 2 Bounce Off, kind of a strictly better unsummon. Disdainful Strokes in the deck because it's a counter spell, so it's 3 steps ahead and negate. You want to play counter magic in your blue sideboard. A quick pro tip for any new players out there: you start playing with Final Fantasy, play counter spells in your sideboard when you jump up to best of 3. Litho Breaking gets a spot in here above Fire Magic. We haven't seen that too often this season, but Litho Breaking gives us a lander token. We want artifacts. Let's go. Ghost Vacuum is also in here as a 2-of. We're playing a 1-of in the main deck. We can search it up some of the time. But let's go ahead and put 2 more in the sideboard. We're gonna need that against Reanimator and stuff. So weird looking pile. I told you, man, it gets freaky this week. It's a wild week this week, but really cool looking deck. And I gotta again commend Cute Chandra for putting out the same banger over and over, but hoping maybe somebody will notice. I've noticed. If there's any pointers about this deck I missed, because I'm sure there are, I'm sure there's so many things that I've missed that synergize in this deck, then hit me up in the comments section. I want to know it all, dude. This is a neat one. But final deck of the week is Simic Ouroboroid. Now, I got to give this one the nod because it might be not only the coolest new deck, it's brand new, of the week, but also the most competitive one. Sometimes we are looking at the best new decks. Every now and again, a deck has, in just a week since we've last gathered here in this hallowed space, been able to really carve out a pedigree. And this one has, man. I've given the nod to Hamuda here because Hamuda has been the one mostly on this deck all week. And Hamuda is a celebrated MTGO grinder that's been at it for a while and typically does very well in their endeavors on MTGO. So a near legendary, if not straight up legendary MTGO player here in Hamuda. But there was a player that got a second place in an MTGO challenge with this deck. There's an event where I think Hamuda came in 16th and another player came in 18th with this same deck. And this deck is 5-0'd, I believe, by Hamuda and one other player. A total of, I believe, 3 times this week so far. So, and that, I think that's just in the last 3 days. So Simic Ouroboroid is actually looking like a real deck, not a flash in the pan. Multiple players on it, multiple players doing well with it, top 8ing challenges and stuff. So what are we doing? Is it Tifa.deck? It is not. Not a Tifa or a Mossborn Hydra inside. I only actually see like a couple of landfall payoffs, guys. We got Bristly Bill in here, pushing the price up even more. Why is Bristly Bill $65? Jeez. Just play like Ride the Shoe Puff or something if you can't afford Bristly Bill. Quick pro tip, Ride the Shoe Puff is not Bristly Bill. It's just it's like an enchantment version of Bristly Bill. And it's 10 cents. So play that instead sometime if you have to. But anyway, this deck imports a couple of things over from the Dimir deck in Standard. Interestingly enough, you would not think that deck would forsake swamps for forests, but Yeah, man, it just proves that anything can happen, man. Enduring Curiosity's in the deck. Flood Pit's Drowner is in the deck for the tempo. Spyglass Siren is in the deck because it's a really good little one-drop creature. It's always especially good with Enduring Curiosity. And Flood Pit's Drowner is especially good with Enduring Curiosity in some ways too. So deck can play at instant speed with a couple of its creatures here, but we are also kind of a landfall deck. You know, we've got Bristly Bill, we've got Genomorph Imago in here. Good to see this card getting some play. It's actually seeing play in 2 decks right now. Not just this one, but a more landfall focused deck that does play the Tifas and the Mossborn Hydras is, you know, playing breeding pools and such. And it already plays like a million basics, you know, or not basics, but like fetch lands. So if it wants to play 2 or even 3 colors, it can. So it's been adding Genomorph Imago to give the Tifas flying and stuff. That's been gross. Like all week. That deck does exist. There's even a deck that plays it's just like a mono green Tifa deck, but it plays an island and a mountain in the sideboard along with 3 Dragonback Assaults. So it uses the fetch lands to go get the 2 basic lands and the 2 like off color basic lands and then cast the Dragonback Assault for long games. I think that's very cute. We're not necessarily doing that. Instead, we're playing Paw Patch Recruit and Sentinel of the Nameless City. And Llanowar Elves, you know, and well, Llanowar Elves is usually in the Tifa deck, but you know, Paw Patch Recruit, Sentinel of Nameless City, and 1 copy of Surik Elusive Hunter. I alluded to this earlier, and here it is. Instead of some of the landfall stuff you'd usually see, and instead of, I guess, some of the removal spells in Deep Cavern Bats you'd normally see in a Dimir deck, if you want to look at it that way. So again, we've still got the Curiosity, the Drowner, the Spyglass Siren. What a weird deck to jam together. Like 2 decks to jam together and kind of make them kiss and have a little baby. So here we go. We got this. There's also 3 copies of Bushwhack in the deck as a, you know, 1 mana removal spell, which is pretty good. We'll get to the Ouroboroid in a second. You know, as a 1 mana removal spell. That also goes and get lands for landfall. Not bad. Into the Flood Maw is a 4 of in the deck for tempo. And the Subterranean Schooner, the boat is back. The boat is back and you're going to be in trouble. Good to see you again, man. I feel like people forgot you existed. You're so good for so long. And yet here you are again. But yeah, 3 Ouroboroid is probably the actual star of this deck. It looks so weird because like, do I want to hold up for Enduring Curiosity or do I want to just play Ouroboroid on turn 4? The answer is yes to both questions. So I don't really know what you do. Ouroboroid, you probably want to get down as quickly as possible. And it works really well with a lot of the stuff we're doing in the deck. It works well with Bristly Build. Give it counters and then, you know, move to attacks and everything gets huge. Genomorph Imago. Make it a 3 power, you know, base power guy. And then suddenly everything gets really, really big when you hit your attack stuff. If they target anything, Paw Patch Recruit makes it so that you can put a +1/+1 counter on Ouroboroid. That's great. Sentinel of Nameless City makes maps so you can put +1/+1 counters on Ouroboroid. And you make everything huge. Again, this is where having like a 1 mana flyer comes in because Ouroboroid will end up making him like, you know, or her, Spyglass Siren, whatever, like a 8/8 before it's all said and done. Genomorph Imago too, you know, that makes stuff fly. So you can either make your Ouroboroid fly or whatever your Ouroboroid is making the largest. You can make that fly. You can also get multiple copies of Ouroboroid and then start going like really crazy jack. So the deck looks cool. It's a great home for Ouroboroid. I like the sort of tempo stuff that you can do with the deck to where you can actually land the Ouroboroid on turn 4 and then start going off. You know, there's some really cool stuff about the way this deck is built. I just would not have expected Simic to be the thing, you know, that it was like the home for Ouroboroid, but here we are, man. Simic's not doing too bad this week for a couple of reasons. But we get to the sideboard down here. Let me pan up slightly. We get Heritage Reclamation down here to blow up artifacts and enchantments. We can also mess around in yards and draw cards. Repulsive Mutation is the counter spell of choice for this sideboard. This puts a bunch of +1/+1 counters on a creature, so why not target Ouroboroid with that? And also counterspell the removal spell that's trying to, you know, hit the Ouroboroid. That's a frustrating play. Scavenging Ooze plays around in yards and gets very large. Another copy of Surak against removal heavy decks. Tishana's Tidebinder because, you know, it's good. Why aren't we seeing this in more decks? It's in the Dimir deck, so I guess we ported it over to the sideboard here too. And then a full 4 of Unable to Scream against aggro decks and other decks that play like important creatures. Again, it's a good target for Kona and stuff if you have to deal with that card. I guess it's not because it's not instant speed, but still a 1 mana removal spell is great. Shouldn't have to tell you. So cool include there for the sideboard, but altogether a lack of sideboard counter spells for the most part. There are some in there. But we see a pretty creature-focused, like, half tempo, half beat down, Simic deck, and really like kind of what it's doing. And again, even if it looks weird to you, it's been doing stuff all week. It's been doing pretty darn good all week. So really cool to see some fresh new stuff. I was worried a little bit after the first week we didn't get a whole lot of cool stuff, but now again, people have had the time and the resources and the courage to kind of get some new piles together. And we see a bunch of decks. There was even like a Simic Ugin deck this week. They got 9th place in a challenge, played like Hedron Archive and stuff along with Ugin. Like, it was a wild week, especially for Simic, man. Throw together any Simic pile apparently just works. So, I'll be back next week with more decks. This is a very promising week. If you've seen anything out there in the wild, let me know what it looked like. What kind of haircut did it have? And and let me know how you felt about all these. If you get any games in with any of them, I want to know. Links in the description so you can go over to Moxfield and export them over to Arena, whatever you need to do. But anyway, y'all, just let me know how you felt about all the proceedings and do the YouTube stuff on your way out. Like the video, sub to the channel. I got a Patreon link in the description for that. $2 a month is all it takes. But anyway, y'all, that is all I've got for this one. I am Deb from the place, and I'll catch you cats later. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.